think might be
useful
adjunct to your project.
I mean, I think, well, so I guess just an overarching comment. I mean, pretty much I would guess that if we had a completely different assemblage of people in the room, but I happen to also be in the room, that I would also find threads, So it's not, I guess, again, keeping with our sort of general philosophy, which is, I'm positive that some proactive effort to sort of identify meaningful threads is going to bear fruit, but we also should recognize that we don't have to have team meeting calls every,
what I mean? This is just sort of a
right, but it's
right
just,
now.
But I know that, I know there's this larger aspiration, especially at MacArthur, to have this kind of global space, and we should, and it's just an interesting thing to think about. But I mean, yeah, and really with everyone, the whole, this issue of building awareness of what resources already exist, right? I mean, your two projects nail that exactly, right? In your case, it's a very particular target, and that there's huge investments going into these things that are supposed to empower people to find the information they want, whether that's for research or learning, or because it's something, for example, with the transparency in the government, that seems very civic oriented as well. And then yours obviously is directly targeting that. You're saying there are all these systems in place, and we know they're only marginally effective. How can we augment that? How can we make it better? I mean, I see all of this as being, the means by which, whether you call yourself a citizen journalist or whether you call yourself a community editor, or I don't know, call yourself whatever you want. If you're trying to find a way to get your voice heard, there's these great things that are popping up. There's this amazing capacity these days to do that and to have it mean something. And I think that's what's new in a lot of ways and exciting. And I think for people to kind of be able to take on that role, get the feedback from the community, not see it so much as I'm the one who knows stuff and everybody else gets to consume, but that I am part of an ecosystem, and I just happen to have a role in both filtering and providing and pushing out and augmenting that information. That's very exciting, and I think that runs through every single one of these.
Daniel, have you heard anything that resonates? Yeah.
I think the role that I think we can play, our team, is mainly in promoting awareness of these different projects. So like my role sort of will be to create these, to create a fun contest based on what we've already done. But then creating all these questions will be quite a task, but I think it's actually the most fun task. And being an editor doesn't necessarily mean being an editor of a magazine or the New York Times or something. I get the fun opportunity to sort of edit the questions, and the projects that I think are the most effective, then I can sort of fashion them into questions. So I think I'll be able to benefit from and benefit every project in this whole place, basically.
I'm actually curious about the database you're using to be specific about one project. I'm actually interested in how you can embed database into my platform, so citizen journalists can actually look up the public records and other public, I don't know what kind of database you're using, but it might be really, really helpful for journalists with limited experience, that when they're looking for some information, they know where to go to, and that they know which public record database they're going to use.
As I recall in your proposal,
yeah.
it really is talking about getting some juicy, not just dry data, but some really the kind of stuff that is really newsworthy if you know where to look for it and what you're looking for and how to report it. I mean, you're talking potentially big stories.
The term I wrote down, I forgot to mention in my first thing, was that kind of what we're trying to do is create the 21st century muckraking journalist. And you have all this information, but we're sort of crippled by it. We have all this information now. All this information is sort of like taking steroids or eating 10,000 calories. It isn't good for you if you don't, or eating too much protein. I mean, it's not good for you if you just eat all this 10,000 calories. But if you go and you run like 20 miles a day, 10,000 calories can transform into something awesome. And information overload is like that. And for the past decade, we've had information overload. Now we need to get off the chair.
Exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
journalism.
From my experience as a journalist, really, it was the opposite problem. I don't think a lot of journalists actually know how to use databases. And I don't think, the thing that everybody knows how to use is Google, and we don't go far beyond that very often. And I think for core reporters, they have like core, I don't know, what is it called, the public record database or whatever. But then like for like what I work with, arts journalists, we don't like go on our store or anything like that. Just Google, like that's it, you know. Like so, there might be something like really interesting that we haven't been able to, you know, come across in that way. So that would be interesting to explore.
And how about your team? What kind of things have you heard in these projects that resonate with your work?
I mean, all of it resonates. I mean, what we're trying to do is integrate a lot of these different processes and new media and new sources of data. I mean, as you were saying, I'm sorry, is it Daniel?
Yeah, Daniel.
Daniel was saying it's just so much information. I mean, on one hand, some of our constituents in the neighborhood don't have access to this because of language issues, technology. They don't have a computer. They can't access even Google. And how do you disseminate that information to those people who lack that that platform? And then there's also there's so much information going on, and people are living their daily lives. And how do you get them the information that they need in order to make good choices or live better lives? Not just, it's good to have information, but if you don't do anything with it, or it's not particularly actionable, it's not really useful.
I think a question that a theme that runs through all the projects is the issue of authority and how authority gets constructed. And you know, is everybody simply is everybody an equal? Does everybody play an equal role in their filtering duties, or are there certain is there room for expertise? And that's certainly something that we've run into in our project in dealing with planners and architects, where they see what we're doing as, some of them have seen what we're doing as a threat to the process and to what they do. And understand
it's kind of naive, or they're actually threatened by its sophistication?
No, not by its sophistication. Because lay people might design things and then expect to see what they design.
They don't trust into the deliberation. I mean, I think
Well,
that's...
yeah, but there's also a sense of we have the authority. We're the experts, so you can deliberate all you want, but ultimately
we know what's best for you.
We know what's best for you.
And there's also historical processes at work, right? I mean, there are ways of getting things through the planning process that didn't involve this much empowerment of the folks who might happen to be there. And it's like, oh God, that's like the last thing we need.
Right. I mean, planners, it's only in the last 50 years where planners have even attempted to go out to communities. And because of our cities were systematically destroyed in the middle of the century. And so now we're paying lip service to community engagement. I mean, it's not entirely lip service, that's too cynical, but I think largely it's become lip service. And then so there still is this question of authority. I mean, on one hand, architects and urbanists often do know what's better for cities or for spaces because they understand. They understand that a certain amount of density is going to be good, or whatever. They get these concepts, and the community often doesn't get those concepts. So our task is to try to get the community so that they can understand and have a conversation with the expert. But we don't want to strip the experts of their ranking entirely, and that's the balancing act.
That puts us in an interesting position when it comes to the question of evaluation, because it could very well be that the actual outcome of this process is no different than it would have been had we not gone through this process. But the difference is not so much in the result as it is in actually how we conducted the process.
That's right.
But that's a difficult. I mean, I'm really curious also about how you plan on evaluating the success of your projects, because for us, and this is related to what I raised at lunch, it's easy. Well, it's not easy if you actually talk to experts, but it seems easy to evaluate whether people are learning math or science. What do we do to measure civic engagement? What do we do to measure whether the community feels that their voice is both heard and powerful? Especially if we can't demonstrate that the outcome is any different than it would have been otherwise. So that's I think, an issue that we'll be facing.
I think I'm going to bring this to a